engine results, it would put it in the key, choose your phrases. So let's say I had this key phrase, and I would put it in the meta tags, possibly incorporate it into the H1 tag for the page, and then repeat it at least in the body copy, and that the more often that that phrase appeared on the page would strengthen its listing in the search engine.
Well, you covered actually a bunch of topics there, so we'll get to those on a case-by-case basis. But essentially, the one I'll address now is the meta keywords tag and the meta description tag. Very few engines use that for much anymore because they were too heavily manipulated. So they don't really excuse me. They don't really look heavily at that anymore. They do look heavily though at the title tag, and they do look at the body copy. However, if the copy doesn't read to make sense to the human, usually the search engine can tell, right? So it's almost like you write first for the human and secondarily for the search engine. The differences come in the way you lead off a sentence usually. So if you have a sentence about a down comforter, right? In a catalog, a down comforter copy might be sleep in luxury and softness with our down comforter. SEO copy would be our, goose down filled, extra thick down comforter will provide you a sleep of luxury. So you just sort of, you lead with the nouns that talk about what it is that the page is about. It's about a, goose down filled comforter. Whereas you don't lead with the fluffy stuff like sleep in luxury. What is sleep in luxury? I don't know. It's a direct marketing fluffy word. It doesn't relate. It's not something anybody's likely to type in as a search query. Maybe they will, but it's not nearly as important to you as down comforter related words. So you may want to just flip the way you write your copy around. You can still write really great direct marketing copy leading with sort of more of the noun product related words as opposed to leading with the fluffy stuff. But usually when you just take copy that was originally written for a catalog, for example, or originally written for a brochure, it's usually the copywriter wasn't thinking about it in that way. So it's often backwards. You want to make sure that the search engines can actually read the content that you went to all the trouble of creating. So the kinds of content that search engines can read are HTML, PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoint files, text files of various types, and a couple of other selected file types. If copy is buried in an image because the designer of the site wanted to have a particular font, or as we'll learn about very soon, buried in a Flash file, the search engines can't read it, so they don't even know it's there. So you need to make sure that the copy that you've gone through the trouble of generating is actually in a format that the search engine can find. Yep.
Number one, are PDFs truly, is the text crawlable within the PDF?
If the PDF was generated using a methodology that has the extra layer within the PDF, which most PDFs are, yes, very much so. As a matter of fact, when you do searches on Google, you'll often find PDFs.
I know that was part of the site structure, but I didn't know what the content was being.
Yeah, I mean that's how it decides what that PDF is about. I don't think that PDFs have quite the same power that an HTML document does, but if that's all you've got and you just want to put it out there, you can put it out there.
Second,
yep.
What impact do file extensions have? .html, .htm are the most typical.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any opinion on?
Every test that I've seen shows that the engines are pretty agnostic to the file extension. So there are some people who still believe that there's a bias against the file extensions, which are typically associated with dynamic sites. But I have not noticed that a PHP, ASP, JSP file extension becomes a penalty in organic search. So, did you have a question?
Yeah, just that I'm seeing more and more my clients want Flash and they want dynamic content, usually with PHP pulling out of a database. Is there any move toward trying to capture material from databases, like if you have dynamic
PHP and dynamically driven content is not at all penalized, as long as you follow some guidelines.
Like in shopping carts, say if I have a PHP shopping cart.
Well, first of all, you wouldn't want the spider to follow you into a secured shopping cart environment. But as
right.
far as the product portions of a e-commerce site, absolutely. There are lots of search engine friendly shopping cart platforms that, because it's not the dynamicness or dynamic nature of the content that is screwing up the spider. It's other stuff which we'll come to shortly. As far as Flash,
into the database.
oh sure, absolutely. As far as the problem with Flash is not the Flash itself. It's when you start to put navigational elements within Flash, right? Flash is great. You know, I use a huge Flash movie on my site, but then underneath the Flash movie, I've got my HTML, right? So the Flash as an embedded element in the HTML is fine. But once you start having multiple pages embedded within the Flash and Flash navigation, the search engines can't see that. And the way to know that a search engine can't see that content is as you navigate around the Flash file, the URL's not changing, right? This is just all occurring within one file that's on that one page. So once people start interacting with Flash movies, and there's lots of different pages within that Flash movie, that all shows up as one thing, you know, to a search engine. And even if you followed the SDK that allows you to embed content within a Flash movie in a machine-readable format, it still only shows up as one particular page because you can't link into a Flash movie at a deeper level. So I can't link it to page 16 of a 20-page linear Flash movie. There's no way to do that. So what was your question?
What about Flash navigation to new pages? Does that create orphan pages if they're not linked to an HTML format?
Well, first of all, any Flash navigation to anywhere is bad because they won't find it. If you Flash navigate to an HTML page, it does essentially create the orphan page. But unless somebody linked to that page from somewhere else, it's a fully orphaned page. It's not even a doorway page. It's just invisible. So in that case, if you just love your Flash navigation so much that you can't bear to part with it, the way you would address that is through a secondary navigation in your footer or through a sitemap or something like that. You know, I mean, if you just cannot, you know, you just love it so much because it makes a whizzy noise and flies out with a, you know, the Grinch or something, and you just love that animation, sure, you can keep it, but always provide a secondary navigation that is an alternate to the Flash navigation. Layers are also a problem. You know, when you start using DHTML and cascading style sheets and layers, sometimes if you put something in a layer that's not in that HTML file anymore, and this is getting pretty geeky for web designers, you know, the engine can't find that, right? Because it doesn't execute JavaScript. It doesn't know what's going on in layers. So unfortunately, in web design school, they don't teach SEO yet. They should, but they don't. So when you hire a design firm or a freelancer or whatever, it's just good to ask them, you know, what do you know about SEO? Because that way at least you'll avoid, you know, having to retrofit something later, which is really expensive because you go through all the trouble of developing it and then you have to fix it later. No, cascading style sheets work pretty well. Yeah, because essentially those DHTML is more challenging where there's a layer that the engine can't read, but CSS actually works pretty well because CSS is an external file just influencing how something looks, whereas but it's still all there right in the HTML. So I'll actually show you some examples of that.